my child is gonna get my paperback edition of Wicked with the spine bent open
and the
to the
blue
sex scene.
the sex scene. Yeah, it's underlined, highlighted,
dog-eared. I really would stare at that. I would open it up and just stare at the picture.
I truly thought that if I looked hard enough and long enough that the shadows would move and I might see a little bit of the bean. I thought.
If only I believe.
But on the whole, I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Poor Unfortunate Podcast. I'm Caroline Ametti.
And I'm Conor Perkins. This is the Disney podcast for grown-ups where we shoot the shit about Disney the way that you do with your friends. Thank you, all of our returning listeners, for coming back here with us. It's so nice having you back. And to any new listeners, thank you so much for hitting play. Please also remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way, all of our episodes will download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then everybody, once we get to the end of the episode, please make sure that you leave a written review and hit 5 stars wherever you're listening to the podcast. That way, other people can find the podcast. It helps us get seen in search results. And your review could be the difference between someone hitting play or just passing us by. And then the other thing that you can do is share this episode with somebody. Go to either our social media accounts or just, hit the little share icon or wherever you're listening to this and send it to a friend because sharing is caring.
Jinx.
Jinx, baby. All right. So we are now at our Showdown episode of this cycle. Caroline, why don't you tell folks what we're going to be doing?
Today we are going to be talking about 2 Mickey Mouse cartoons. Have we really dedicated any solid time to Mickey on this podcast? Not really.
I don't think so.
And Fantasmic a little bit is very Mickey-centric.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So we kind of realized that. We had also been talking a little bit about the newer Mickey cartoons, which obviously we will go more in depth about in this episode, that they're always playing on the resort TVs in Disney World.
Yeah.
And I was watching them a lot when I was just there. And so that got us on the topic of new Mickey versus old Mickey. So we were like, okay, how can we put old versus new Mickey head to head? And there was the perfect solution. So this showdown is going to be between 1938's Brave Little Tailor and 2020's The Brave Little Squire, which is obviously inspired by the 1938 cartoon. So we figured that would be the best way to kind of have an even match between old Mickey and new Mickey. And we're going to talk all about it.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched either of these shorts, no worries. They're both on Disney Plus. If you search Brave Little Tailor, you'll find that short right there. And if you're looking for the Brave Little Squire, it's a little bit more difficult to find.
Yes.
Look for The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse cartoons. And it's in season 1. And I believe it's episode
7.
7. Yeah.
Yep.
So go ahead. If you haven't seen those, it'll take you less than 20 minutes. So pause this, go watch them, and we'll wait for you. And welcome back. So much like we've done in the past when we've talked about shorts, we're going to be dividing these into 2 different sections. So one is about story and characterization, their strengths and weaknesses, and the other one is music and design, their strengths and weaknesses there. So each of us have done some background information for you. I'll go first because I have the old one. So
yeah,
let's talk Brave Little Tailor. It is a 9-minute animated short film from Walt Disney Productions, and it is the 103rd short in the Mickey Mouse film series. It was released on September 23rd, 1938 in theaters with the film Fugitives for a Night. The short was released in 2001 as part of Walt Disney Treasure's Mickey Mouse in Living Color, which was like a collector's edition set. It was also featured on DVD releases of The Sword and the Stone, the 2018 Celebrating Mickey Blu-ray DVD digital combo compilation, and the 2023 Mickey and Minnie 10 Classic Shorts Volume 1 Blu-ray DVD digital combo compilation. It was directed by Bill Roberts and Bill Gillett. The story is by Joe Grant. It's based on The Valiant Little Tailor, which is a fairy tale from the Brothers Grimm. The music is by Albert Hay Malott. It's produced by Walt Disney, and it's distributed by RKO Radio Pictures. It stars Walt Disney, Eddie Holden, and Billy Sheets. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of like how it was received. So it was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film in 1939, but it lost to Ferdinand the Bull, which was also a Walt Disney short.
Oh.
In 1994, it was listed as the 26th greatest cartoon of all time by animators in a list compiled for the book The 50 Greatest Cartoons, which it was a list that was made of all the greatest cartoons by animators for animators.
Oh, cool.
So now I'm going to give you a little plot synopsis because if you didn't watch it, like I just told you to, all right. This plot synopsis is from the Disney Wiki. So, you know, I didn't really write it.
That's okay.
Touch grass. In a faraway kingdom, the people fear of a giant who comes and eats all their food and livestock. Everyone asks if there is someone who can slay a giant. Mickey, the tailor, kills 7 flies with one blow. The townspeople, thinking that Mickey is talking about giants, not flies, spread rumors and the king asks to see him. Mickey explains exactly what happened, but then he realizes it was all a misunderstanding and he is being sent out to catch a giant. The king offers him money and the hand of the Princess Minnie at her request in return. And afterwards, she begins to kiss Mickey, who is love-struck and can't help but agree. After leaving the kingdom, Mickey becomes worried as he doesn't know how to catch a giant. Things get serious when a real giant shows up, starts to eat pumpkins, drinks the water from the well, and turns some hay into a cigar. Mickey is almost eaten and smoked, but eventually realizes that his sewing skills prove to be useful in outsmarting and capturing the giant. With the giant vanquished, they decide to use the giant as an operating system for a fairground where Mickey and Princess Minnie share a kiss on a carousel that is all windmill powered. And the king is on his own carousel horse eating ice cream and goes, wee-hee! That's Brave Little Tailor, folks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let's talk about the Brave Little Squire. So the Brave Little Squire is the 7th episode of The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse. This Disney Plus original series is itself a continuation or revival series to Mickey Mouse, a series of animated shorts developed, produced, and directed by Paul Rudish, which ran on Disney Channel from June 2013 to July 2019 and won multiple Emmy Awards. So a little bit about Paul Rudish. Before his Disney work, he was best known for his work on Cartoon Network, including shows like Dexter's Laboratory and the Powerpuff Girls, the latter of which was like my life at one point when I was a kid.
That was when they do the cartoons.
Cartoons. Oh my God. Dun, 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 dun. Cartoon. Oh my God, please. Okay. So with Mickey Mouse, Paul Rudish aimed to evoke the slapstick feel of the original Mickey cartoons while placing the sensational 6 characters in more contemporary settings. But back to the wonderful world of Mickey Mouse. Paul Rudish returned to the series as executive producer and supervising director, and another returning artist was composer Christopher Willis and the majority of the voice cast from Mickey Mouse. The series premiered on November 18th, 2020 on Disney Plus to coincide with Mickey's 92nd birthday, with 2 episodes premiering per week for the first month. The series consists of 25 episodes and 5 specials across 2 seasons, with the special Steamboat Silly serving as the series finale, which was released on July 28th, 2023. The series features lots of cameos by Disney characters and original songs, and I just really wish I had been watching these back in those deep pandemic times because I think they would have really cheered me up, and I wasn't, and I should have been. This episode, The Brave Little Squire, originally aired on December 11th, 2020, within that first month of the series, inspired by, of course, Brave Little Tailor. The episode is directed by Mike Bell, with storyboards by Mike Bell and Brianne Druhard, and it is written by Mike Bell, Derek Brackman, Leanna Dindal, Brianne Druhard, Rick Roxburgh, and Paul Rudish, and produced by Disney Television Animation. It stars Chris Diamantopoulos as Mickey, Jeff Bennett as Mortimer Mouse, Dame Joanna Lumley as the narrator, Caitlin Robrock as Minnie, and Bill Farmer providing additional voices. This episode has an 8 out of 10 on IMDb, and both this series and the previous Mickey Mouse series went on to inspire the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway attraction, as well as the Aqua Mouse aboard some Disney Cruise Line ships. Little plot synopsis, thank you from me as well to Disney Wiki. It's a little corrected. In medieval times, in a not-so-peaceful kingdom, humble peasant Mickey dreams of becoming a legendary knight. The local hero is Mortimer Mouse, a supposedly great knight whose will is to protect the kingdom from menaces of every kind. One day, Mortimer appears at a square in the town and proclaims that he's looking for a new squire since his previous one, most likely to be Donald, has been incinerated by a dragon. Mickey gladly offers to take the job, and Mortimer accepts, thinking that Mickey is just the sucker he's looking for. The duo goes patrolling the region and finds himself face to face with a monstrous, gigantic troll. Mickey fights the creature and defeats it, while Mortimer stays hidden. The cowardly knight takes all the credit for Mickey's deeds. Sometime after, the kingdom is taken by a wave of criminality and robberies, and again, Mickey does all the work while Mortimer hides, once again taking all the credit. This goes on until one day, a mighty and furious dragon attacks Queen Minnie's castle while she and Mortimer are having tea. Fearful, Mortimer runs away while Mickey races toward the danger and defeats the dragon. The kingdom recognizes Mortimer for the fraud he is, and Mickey is knighted, eventually fulfilling his dream of becoming the greatest knight that ever lived. The Brave Little Squire. Good job, Mickey.
Good for him. All right, so now we're going to go through our sort of analyses of these two shorts and see how they do up against each other. I think just to shake things up, maybe let's start with music and design and we'll end with story and characters.
Cool, fun. I like it.
Okay, so we'll start with Brave Little Tailor. So some of the strengths that we've got in the design and music. The costuming in this short is so well done. The costumes for Mickey and Minnie especially are always featured among some of their best outfits that they've worn through the years. I mean, hell, at the end of Walt Disney World's Fantasmic, Mickey Mouse fights the Maleficent dragon in his Brave Little Tailor outfit.
And I never had an appreciation for that because I think I had seen this cartoon like once in my life. And so now I'll appreciate it so much more.
I don't think I had ever seen Brave Little Tailor until watching it
gosh.
for this. I think now I've watched it like 7 times.
I know.
So these costumes, they're heavy medieval with the peasant tops and the cone princess hats. It's giving that classic fairy tale look that we would expect. But it also firmly grounds us in a world that feels like it exists outside and apart from Mickey Mouse. And he is assuming the role of the Brave Little Tailor in a way that our favorite actors would. The design allows us to see all of the recognizable features of Mickey and Minnie for that matter, while simultaneously allowing them access to this world through their wardrobe. It's kind of really, really well done.
Yeah.
Also, I feel kind of ridiculous putting this much attention onto this cartoon.
I had the same thought. I think I have a comment in my notes about that. I was like, why are you thinking about this
But
so
you know
deeply?
what? Listen, folks, we're doing this.
That's why we're here.
Also, the watercolor backgrounds are beautiful. It makes the world of this short feel so much richer and grounded. The backgrounds are incredibly detailed, and it doesn't feel like there were shortcuts taken in building out the locations of this story simply because it's a cartoon. I mean, the castle and the town and the fields all feel as grand as any that appear in a classic feature-length animation like Snow White or Pinocchio. You can clearly see that Disney Animation is building on the momentum of Snow White and continuing to ramp up their designs for all of their work, as opposed to pulling back or taking a break in one area to boost another. And then I'd also say the musical theme that we hear in the main titles and that Mickey is whistling while he sews in the tailor shop, I think it's a really fun theme for the story and the character. It has this sort of like jolly, lilting march to it that perfectly matches the moral of the story of brains over brawn and the small guy going up against the giant. They then return to this theme in the fair music at the end of the short, and that's a fun little twist as we kind of come full circle. Also, all of the music in general is used to really heighten the action sequences that happen with the giant toward the end of the short. So, you know what? I really appreciate that because otherwise that would have been like the fight sequence with the giant is pretty extensive and it would have been pretty empty without it.
Yeah.
So those are some of my big strengths that I've got for the design and music. What do you have?
I pretty much said the same thing. That costuming is so strong. And I just love that it is so clearly, Mickey's outfit specifically is so clearly the basis for so many general Disney costumes that would come after it, from Robin Hood to Peter Pan.
Yeah.
And then even his outfit in Mickey and the Beanstalk almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
It's like, it's simple, it's charming and very memorable. It, like you said, it contributes to Mickey's sweet everyman quality. Minnie's princess outfit is
The
adorable.
shoes
Yes,
also.
the little shoes.
The shoes are the same as Robin Hood's shoes. They're the same as Peter
Yes.
Pan's shoes. Those like
Yes.
squishy things.
The squishy
like
little
squishy bread
sock
loaves.
shoes.
Yeah.
I also kind of love that Minnie's princess outfit is like a little bit childlike. It just makes her so adorable. The colors feel just right. The giant as well clearly inspired the look for the giant in Mickey and the Beanstalk. So just overall, so many later cartoons owe their looks to this one. And you can just see that so clearly.
I think this is one of the cutest Minnie Mouse
So
looks ever.
I agree.
Like,
She's adorable in this. She's so cute. And her
She's
little
just such a standout.
eyelashes. She's so cute.
her eyelash, and she has so much personality coming through.
Yeah,
and
she does.
She's not even in it for that long.
Minnie gives a great performance in this.
Bravo.
And then the only other thing I'll say, you captured it all, but the version that's up on Disney Plus is like obviously remastered. But I have to say also, this animation is just really fantastic for 1938. This is only 10 years after Steamboat Willie. And in terms of the movement and the style of the characters, I would say that the animation is nearly as good as that in Cinderella, which wouldn't come out for 12 more years after this. I feel like most of the evolution over those years was in like more like texture and color, but the movement here is just as good. It is super smooth and realistic, and like there's nothing about this. Some older cartoons and just older films in general, you're like, I'm watching something old. It takes you out of it a little. And I just didn't really have that experience watching this. It still feels very, very fresh to me.
Yeah, in the same way, like it kind of feels like design-wise appear to like Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that type of way. I mean, granted, not exactly, but
it's very far
feels
down the
close.
road for how many
Yeah.
years are in between those two things. Definitely.
I agree. Let's talk about some of the, weaknesses in the design and music here. So I'm going to say some things that are just kind of going to be obvious, and I don't necessarily think it's the fault of this short. I think a lot of it has to do with the time that it was being made. So the color is nowhere near as vibrant as the Brave Little Squire. I know that, it's more to do with the age of the cartoon and the limitations of the coloring techniques at the time. But I'm also just like, I know it's been remastered, but I just feel like we could do one more. Like,
I totally agree with you. Yeah.
it's a classic, and I feel like we owe it to just make sure that it's looking the best that it does.
As fresh as possible. Yeah.
I found some stills online of the short that have much better color than what I'm watching on Disney Plus.
Mhm.
And for Disney, which is known for their ink and paint, like I want to see that color. Another thing that I have to sort of call out here, the all black eyes for Mickey and Minnie that don't have any whites
Mhm.
is a tad unsettling. On one hand, it takes these two characters out of the world of the story because all of the other characters have whites around their eyes and
Oh,
the black pupils.
Right.
And so it almost sort of like calls attention to the fact that Minnie and Mickey are actors within this story and everyone else are like playing themselves. So, on that side of things, it's kind of cool because those designs immediately connect them to each other while also distancing them from all the other characters of the world. But then on the other hand, it also makes it very difficult to add expressiveness and personality to the character that usually comes out in the eyes. But then also back on the other hand, if these characters are supposed to be like everyman types of characters that we are superimposing ourselves onto, then it also like would make sense not to use the eyes to reveal anything more than like a broad stroke of the character instead of nuanced expressiveness that you get in eyes. I don't know if this makes any sense that I'm going through.
It does.
I'm
It
going
does. Yes.
back and forth. I don't know whether this is good or bad, but it just really
You
stuck out
notice
to
it.
me that
Yeah,
Mickey
you notice
and
it.
Minnie's eyes were different from everyone else's. It's unsettling. I don't know if I liked it, so I'm putting it under weakness.
There you go. Yes.
Because
yes.
gotta put something. And then also, for as much as I loved that musical theme for the Brave Little Tailor, and it perfectly captured the spirit of the story and the characters, we really don't hear that much of it. After the beginning, it is more or less abandoned until we hear it in the fairground music at the end. And even then, if you're not paying attention, you may not notice that it is the same theme. So I think we need to hear it a little bit more throughout to be able to really recognize it at the end of the short in that fair music. Like when Mickey begins his journey and leaves the castle walls, they cut immediately to him like deflated at a rock. That would have been a great opportunity to just have him like walking away and they could bring the theme back in there one
Mhm.
more time, just so that we've got like a third touch of that music, because, having it would really make us remember that theme and, take the side of our hero. And then I would also say just like a little bit more music in general, I don't think would have hurt the short at all, especially in the beginning section, just to help elevate it a little bit more. It feels very quiet in the beginning when it's a lot of dialogue, and then it becomes a heavy music section. And it kind of would have been nice to like blend the two a little bit more, just to elevate it even. And like this is very nitpicky because I do think a lot of it is working really, really well in this short. But if I had to say like a wish list, these are my things.
Yeah, mine is brief as well. It really has to do, I'm not a big fan of the score. It's fine for me. It sounds to me like the pretty typical scores of the Mickey cartoons of the time. So there isn't anything super distinct that ties it to the setting of this particular cartoon, which I could have used. Again, it felt a little bit nitpicky to me as well. And then, yes, my other thing is feeling slightly unsettled by the animation of a character as well. And for me, it's the king,
Yeah.
because he's like, okay, he's a human, right?
Is he a human dog man?
Like, what is he? What is he? I'm very
Yeah.
unsettled by like the stubble on his
The
cheeks.
stubble. Yeah, I
He
didn't
gives
say
me
that. I should have
icky
said that.
vibes. He gives me very, very icky vibes.
But he gives you his
But he's
look gives you
nice.
icky vibes, but he's nice.
That's what I was just going to say. I'm like, it makes no sense because you expect something out of him, but he's like, no, he's pretty nice, kingly man, but he
Yeah.
gives you the creeps when you see him. So I thought that was odd. And I was looking at him and I was like, is he a humanoid?
I wonder if he's based on
dog?
anybody in particular.
Yeah.
And
I did not like him.
I didn't
I
research
didn't like
that
him
enough.
at all. He gave me the creeps.
It's
But
like
that was-
bulldog. He's got jowls.
Yes, yes. So no, he wasn't doing it for me. And since there are so few featured characters in this, he really drew my attention.
The king, he wasn't doing it for
He
her.
wasn't doing it for me. But that's really all I have.
All right. Let's talk music and design of the Brave Little Squire.
So the strengths. Oh my gosh, I think this score is so delightful through and through, especially the end credits music. There's a ton of variety throughout the cartoon. From the more cinematic and romantic intro music, we've got classically royal sounding horns, adventurous strings. It is a score. It even includes like special sound effects like record scratches, tinkly like magical pixie dust sounds, and more. It just enhances the action at every moment. And then just the special cherry on top for me is that very jaunty, like almost like Renaissance fair style music for the credits that just like ties the perfect little bow on the episode for me. It's not like you want to hang on until the very end of the credits because it just finishes out the whole episode in such style. I love it. So then let's talk about the overall animation style we got to talk about the series overall.
Yeah.
I think it's really nice. Let's call it a specific moment before we talk about it overall. The animation of the barrels, for example, comes to mind. And it's very well encapsulated in like the Runaway Railway attractions, for example. I haven't been able to find a lot of information about it online, aside from the fact that this style is obviously like digital animation that's finished with something called vector animation software, which means that the motion is controlled by vectors instead of pixels. I can kind of grasp what that means, but I can't explain it back to you. But I have seen it called cheap and fast online, which it is supposed to make things get done more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be true.
I believe like vector animation is there's like you choose a specific point
Mhm.
and manipulate all of the pieces of the animation around that point. So like
Okay.
if you're moving a character, like if you're animating a character, you pick a point and it attaches to all of the like figures of the character, and you pull on like the lines to sort of like squish and move them around like that. A lot
Oh.
of like logo animations that people will do, like fun little like animations, use
Yes,
vector
I read
animation.
that. Yes, I read about that. They said, like, it's very popular for, like, online ads. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of discourse about this online. I understand a lot of the differing opinions about this. There's something about it to me that's visually appealing. It's just a personal thing. In these very specific moments, the 2D world features these sort of like 2.5D images that feel more textured and dimensional, and it grabs my attention every time, and I find it very visually interesting. And I'll touch more on that in a second. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and I guess this kind of could be part of the story as well, but the visual gags and Easter eggs in this are so great. And they aren't
Yeah.
just silly fun, they match the story and really enrich the setting. So that's a pretty big home run for a cartoon, which could just be going for silly or just like gags or Easter eggs for the sake of it. So we have cameos by Madam Mim, Sir Hiss, Lady Cluck, Maleficent's goons, Alan Adale, Skippy, Friar Tuck Trigger, and more. So not only are they really fun to spot, but they enrich the medieval setting since it matches the setting of their original films. So the Easter eggs aren't random. They serve a purpose for immersion in this specific setting. I love when Mickey gets a bright idea. The light bulb over his head is a lantern. I mean, it's just so cute and
Yeah.
funny. Obviously, his outfit is an ode to his Brave Little Tailor costume. And the storybook style opening is not only, of course, a reference to classic Disney films like Snow White, but very clearly sets the tone and setting of this episode, as opposed to other episodes of this series, the large part of which have more modern, everyday settings. So there are just some really clear choices being made here and that make this episode stand out within the series as well. And there's just something about the wonderful world of Mickey Mouse and the Mickey Mouse series, and this episode especially, that feel actually very aesthetically comforting to me. And I know that there are people who actually disagree with that, and we'll talk about
Mhm.
that a little bit more in the story as well. I think it's the combination of color palettes with the soft storybook like backgrounds with the very clear foreground characters and the scoring. And despite the often, and like I said, we'll talk about this in story and characters, despite the often overblown situations, facial expressions, and dialogue, there is still something very palatable about this because of the design. Like you can have it on in the background in the way that some cartoons you can't really. There's been a lot of talk about this animation style, as I mentioned. It's been a bit polarizing, but I think it's a really great combination of some of the more exaggerated facial features, like we were talking about Mickey's eyes, things like that, of the 30s, with the background designs that feel very 50s and 60s inspired. So even though this is very clearly new and modern, there's something familiar about the aesthetic of this. And some people say that it has too much of a Ren and Stimpy vibe, but this is so much softer than that style. I understand the parallel they're trying to draw, but this is much softer. And I think this is a very nice, modern, happy medium in terms of the design and the aesthetic.
I would actually agree with that. My strengths, I think the callbacks to other characters were fantastic. It's a design choice that really grounds us in the world.
Hmm.
But then I actually really love this animation because it is doing so many different things that feel referential to the way animation was being done at the time of the original Mickey shorts,
Hmm.
where it's like people will call the vector animation fast and cheap. Well, yeah, that's kind of how they were making
Yeah,
cartoons
great
back then. They were making them
point.
fast and cheap.
Great
So
point.
it feels like we're figuring out what is the modern way that we do things fast and cheap? It's vector animation.
Hmm.
And like how do we honor what they were doing in those animations with their, like stagnant backgrounds and stagnant non-animated characters that are in the backgrounds.
Hmm.
We still have that. I'm like, they clearly know how to animate an entire frame, but they're intentionally choosing not to. And that is what is really elevating it for me and making it, these are all conscious stylistic choices to make this feel like an old cartoon, even though it is a very, very new cartoon. And I don't think any other show is really doing this, or any other property really could do this except for like
Mm,
the Looney Tunes.
true. True.
So yeah, it just like everything about it, the animation techniques that are being used, the visibility of like the brush strokes, and because they're using all kinds of different types of like digital paint techniques in the way that these old cartoons used a lot of different types of
Mhm.
animation and painting techniques. So I don't know, they're playing with the medium as much as all of those people back then when they were creating the medium were playing with it. And
Yeah.
listen, if it's not your cup of tea, don't watch it. But the art form benefits from sandboxes, and
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
really like are treating this like a sandbox to play in. And we're getting some really, really cool design stuff out of it. Like a lot of this animation feels very similar to some of the stuff that they're using in Bluey right now.
Mhm.
It's working. It's working for me.
It's working for me too. Okay. Weaknesses, honestly, I kind of only have one thing, and it's not even a weakness. It's just something that I wish was there. I would have actually really enjoyed an original song in this episode, the way that some of the other episodes from the series have them. It would have really added to the Disney fairy tale aesthetic that this is playing off of. Like, I could see it being something like a play on like an Oodalali type song, maybe. There's a lot of
Yeah.
options. And I think it would have added a little bit of warmth to this episode as well. And it is not lacking in warmth, but we will talk a little bit more about that when we get to the story and characterization. But I think it would have been a nice touch.
I would agree. And for me, while the music is great in it, there's no really identifiable musical theme or something that we can really latch on to that feels like our like hero song. And I would have loved that because, it really makes these stick out. But at the same time, I'm also very aware that this is a short that's part of a greater collection of shorts that are all being released together. So it's not always intended for one short to stick out more than the other, but at the same time, like, I'm kinda looking for it too because I'm like, I love the musical themes of Brave Little Tailor, Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mickey and the Beanstalk even. They're all sort of taken to the next level by having very recognizable music that sticks with you, be it like, "Oh, What a Happy Day" from Mickey and the Beanstalk or,
Oh, yeah.
you know, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I would love to have it, like you said, like, I'd love to have a song, but I also kind of understand that, like, when you're doing a collection, you have to think about the whole collection as well. And then I'll also just say, like, it's beautiful, it's stylized, and that's wonderful, but it's not a watercolor background. Like, it's not a watercolor background.
Fair, fair.
All right, so now let's talk story and characters. Let's go back to Brave Little Tailor.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to start off with the strengths in Brave Little Tailor, and I'm going to focus first on like story, and then I'm going to get into characters because I know we want to talk about the characterization of Mickey Mouse in
Yeah.
general here.
Yes.
So, a strength that we've got, it's based on a grim fairy tale. So the natural story structure is built into it. We've got reversals, calls to adventure, subversions, and a satisfying catharsis by the end. So these are like solid storytelling beats that are easy to follow, which is really so important for a short film, particularly a cartoon. We need to be able to
Mm.
know exactly what's going on at every single minute, and then it's over.
Yep.
This is a grim fairy tale that I'm much less familiar with. So I think it was a great opportunity to showcase the story, play up some comedy, but also like put a Disney stamp on it and insert Mickey as our lead. So it's a really nice
Mm.
access point to a fairy tale that it feels like you can do much more with because it's not instantly recognizable to some
True.
people.
Yeah, I actually had no idea it was based on a grim fairy
Yeah,
tale.
you would think you'd like Brave Little Tailor. Oh, that's the Mickey Mouse cartoon.
Absolutely,
No,
yeah.
it's something else. Yeah.
Wow.
I will also say, and this is just me having like a little moment here, but Minnie Mouse's agency is a real asset to this story.
It's true.
She is the eager one to offer her own hand in marriage as a prize to the tailor for taking care of the giant. And she's also the one who runs to Mickey and kisses him all over. Like, she's a woman who knows what she wants,
Yeah.
and she's not waiting to be given it by a man. And I also love that her father, the king, which is why, like, talking about his design is
It's
so
like,
disturbing
who
because
is
the king never even thought of offering his daughter's hand as a
True.
prize. Instead, he just kept offering more money. And I'm like, you go, Mr. King, dude. I'm like,
Yeah, I
that's the way to do
enjoy.
it.
Yep.
Like, he's like, no, my daughter's not like property. She's not part of this. And then she's
Mm.
like, actually make me part of this. And he's like, you heard her. I'm like, that's what we
You heard
want.
her?
That's what we want. Like, I'm sorry, but is Brave Little Tailor a feminist like icon moment? I don't know. So now let's talk about Mickey. So Mickey in this, he's that reluctant hero. He's the everyman type. This is the version of Mickey that is curious, well-meaning, a little bit naive as well.
Mm-hmm.
He feels like a rough sketch of a character or like a generalization that we can then see ourselves into, as opposed to having very specific character strokes being put on him.
Yeah.
We're definitely moving away from some of the outright like lovable mischievousness of the character that we get in the silly symphonies like Steamboat Willie.
Mhm.
There is less of that overt specific characterization of this Mickey. Now, part of this can just be the fact that Mickey is playing a character in this story. So he's playing, the beats that have to serve this particular character, not himself. But I do think that this is an intentional choice around the persona of Mickey at the time.
Mhm.
Like, don't get me wrong, Mickey is still a unique and identifiable character. And he is definitely bringing the Mickey charm and the Mickey innocence to the demands of the role. And we see this in moments like his pride in killing the flies as he announces it to the men outside, which feels very pure and very genuine.
Yeah.
It's also in his impassioned speech about how he killed them, his being smitten with Minnie, and even in his like nervous yet happy first contact with the giant when he says Gesundheit and then like laughs afterwards. But it's that same sort of like friendly neighborhood Spider-Man sensibility of someone that is earnest while also playful. So never forgoing a chance at levity just because of the terrifying gravity of the situation. So it's a Mickey that is very easy to identify with because he is responding in a way that we would respond or hope to respond, thereby, making him relatable. So for this version of Mickey Mouse, less specifics is more.
Yeah.
It feels very intentional what they're doing with him of like, we're going to give you the outline of the character that you're familiar with, but we're going to do less of like telling you how he is. And we're just going to throw him into situations and he's going to respond in a way that you could then be like, oh yeah, I do that. Like, it feels like very modern 1930s man to be like, Gesundheit, haha. Like,
Yeah,
like,
it does.
like it's like a dad joke almost.
Right.
So like when I'm thinking of the people who are going to see these movies and are getting a cartoon right before, they want to see themselves reflected in the character. It's very, and I think at this time they're going, all right, people are familiar with Mickey. So now let's take our foot off the gas of character for a bit and let people see just a hero going through the story. And I think you see that more in also like a lot of the shorts that then start coming out after this one, where we're now saying like Mickey is Mickey.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
We're not trying to establish what is Mickey. We already know who Mickey is. So now it's like, what
We're
else?
Sitting back a little, yeah.
Yeah, we're just like trusting that like people are bringing whatever they need to Mickey, and hopefully that's themselves, and they're just putting that onto the character. So we've got like the core bits where it's like, he's innocent, he's genuine, he's always got like a laugh and like a quick joke, but like he's not an antagonist in the way that like Donald Duck is.
Right.
So I think that's a strength of this one. It's a very intentional characterization of Mickey, and I think their intention is right, and I think that they have accomplished that intention in this short.
I agree with you.
If any of that makes sense.
No, it does, because it's like actually ties into, I'll talk about Mickey's characterization first because it ties into something I wrote. It's so interesting. This cartoon really reminds me of some of the core reasons I love Mickey, like the way that he wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah.
I love that his love for Minnie is the thing that gives him the courage to seek out the dragon, and he can't be bought with a monetary reward. I feel like that was a great choice. But the moment that stood out to me that I was like, oh yeah, I feel that way, is when he's sitting dejectedly by the rock and he goes, gosh, I don't know how to catch a giant. And it really moved me. I was like, that is such that like kind of sad imposter syndrome-y feeling. I did, maybe it's just the place where I'm at in my life. I don't know. But it was so endeared to him in that moment. And also was like, I know that feeling. And it's that universality that is so Mickey. And one of the reasons that we love him, exactly what you were saying. And like, there's space for us to put ourselves onto Mickey as well. I feel like that's really happening here. I agree. And I hadn't really realized that that's what was happening, but it is. And then other just strengths of the story. The misunderstanding unravel at the beginning is really fun. And it had me pulled in from the get-go because I was like, how is this going to get miscommunicated? Like I was bought in very immediately. And I loved how quickly it gets established. Like the beginning of this cartoon clips along at a really nice pace. And I find for me and my personal taste, for some reason, some older cartoons can just be slow going for me. And this is just boop, boop, we clip along. It does slow down a little bit when we get to the giant, but the beginning is very like we move, we establish, we unravel a misunderstanding. Like it's good stuff.
And I think that it makes sense to sort of slow down a bit when you get to the giant because like that's the action. That's the cartooniness of it. We get all the exposition and then we're like, all right, now we can just do funny gags.
Right. Speaking of, I think the giant and smallness juxtaposition gags are pretty fun here. Like the giant eats pumpkins like they're small pieces of candy. He uses the stove as a lighter. The well is a glass of water. The haystack with the tarp is a cigar.
Fun.
The well is my favorite one. The haystack with the tarp as a cigar is my least favorite one.
With rolling paper?
Stop.
I love the hinge of the roof.
Yes. And I think that gag gets used again in Mickey and the Beanstalk. So just like so many things are pulling from this. And while I will say like I can like my personal taste now, I'm not like laughing out loud funny. They're not my favorite thing. But I think for the time, this was very clever and probably would have had people just
totally
eating the shit up. Like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
All right, so now let's talk about some of the weaknesses here in the story. And part of that, I think, part of what you just said is actually what I have here in my weaknesses, where right now it doesn't feel so much as a funny cartoon as it is a humorous story.
Agree.
Like over time, as cartoons have evolved, this actually feels a lot more subdued.
Yes.
I would say that the Mickey Mouse cartoons nowadays, that feels more like a cartoon where it's just like blah 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 in the same like fast-paced way that these were viewed then. Our intake has sped up, and so this now feels a lot more subdued at a slower pace and everything. I still love that. Like I remember before these new Mickey Mouse cartoons, the resort TVs in Disney World would play classic Mickey, Goofy, Pluto, Donald cartoons, and that was what was on the TV whenever we were back in a hotel room. And I loved those. But this particular cartoon, I don't know, I almost want to say like it's a little bit relaxed.
Yes, it's relatively gentle. Like, Mickey gets knocked around, but it's kind of gentle. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, as I'm watching, I'm not feeling my body have quite the peaks and valleys that I would get from
Tom and Jerry. And
because I'm like, okay, and here we go. And part of that is because it's structured as a story as opposed to like we're making up our own thing. We've got something to follow. So I don't know if that's a weakness per se, but I don't necessarily think it's a strength, but I think it's something that needs to be said. And then, we've got our dated references here. The biggest being the fact that the giant full-on rolls a fucking haystack cigarette and smokes it.
I can't.
And like, listen, this cartoon wasn't targeted for children when it was being shown at a movie theater ahead of a like mystery film. So we understand that. But even so, I don't know. It just makes it a little awkward for us now.
It does.
Especially when you get the little thing of like, caution, this has smoking depictions. And I'm like, it has a big smoke. Like, they make a meal out of the smoking moment more than like any of the other bits.
Says, like,
maybe
smoke,
the well bit.
Smoke.
He's like, smokes. I'm so excited for my smokes. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. What weaknesses do you have?
Okay, mine, I caught myself. Mine is like a brain dump, and it is very nitpicky, but they were just thoughts that I couldn't stop from going through my head, so I'm going to share them with you now.
Pick the nits.
So while I understand the comedic and cartoony effect of cutting right to the fair and seeing the way that the kingdom has become just like a big old barrel of fun since Mickey defeated the giant, the ending is so random to me. And the king, again, I just can't, with the ice cream on the carousel going like,
And the
woohoo!
wee.
Like,
Woohoo.
it just, I don't know. It's very appropriate for like a short cartoon. It just was hitting me in a strange way.
Sure.
Again, nitpicky. The giant as the quote unquote villain is meh for me. I find the giant and Mickey and the Beanstalk to be a much more vivid character. Now, I know the point of the story is not about the giant's personality or his character development at all. But maybe even if he just had like one distinguishable personality feature, I think it would have made this even more fun. Like, even if that quality is that he's really mean, which I guess he is because he does try to squish Mickey.
Yeah, but there is something interesting about Willie the Giant and Mickey and the Beanstalk, because even though he's much more lovable, I actually found Willie the Giant to be more scary than this giant.
Willie would chill me to the bone when I was a child.
And I think it's because you are taken into Willie so much where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
he's fun. And then he just turns.
Yes, and
And
you're
you're
like,
like, oh my God.
You're like, you have a real personality. Yeah, exactly. So you're like, you have a real personality. How can you turn? Whereas this guy is just not really smart. He doesn't really have a personality. So it's just like
Yeah.
random destructiveness. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But
I know what you
Willie,
mean.
I'm telling you, Willie scared the living daylights out of me when I was a kid. He really creeped
I
me
love
out.
Willie.
Oh my God, Willie. Yeah, all of these things, like what I talked about earlier with like the king and like how is that Minnie's father? It's nitpicky. Like none of this truly matters. And if I was just watching this cartoon, I wouldn't even think twice about it. But if I'm here to take a closer look at the story, yeah, there are just some small details that like stand out to me as being sort of unexplained. I feel like the fair is sort of one of those.
Yeah.
In a similar vein, I could have used a little bit more of Mickey living up to his profession a little bit more. I do not know the original fairy tale, so have no basis to go off of in terms of that. I would have liked Mickey to use his tailor skills to defeat the giant even more than he does. And he does. It's fun that he snips himself out of the giant's sleeve with his scissors and then he uses thread to tie him up. But that only happens in the final moments of the confrontation. And I wish throughout Mickey's like ingenuity, or even if it's just dumb luck, was like more due to his trade. Otherwise, like, of course, now I know it's based on a fairy tale, but he could have been like the brave little chef or the brave little like horse hand.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I
know
could
what
have
you mean.
used
Like,
more
why
of
is
that.
Why is he a tailor?
Why
Yeah.
is he a tailor? We could have had more fun with that. But again, very nitpicky. And then if you really get into like, I felt mean doing this because I don't mean it. I really like Mickey in this, but I'm like, is he super brave? Like, he definitely goes to find the giant despite not knowing how to catch him and being very afraid. That's brave. But he falls more into this more than like choosing to be brave. He's more peer pressured than anything. But then I caught myself and I was like, honey, stop. So that's it.
Honey, stop. Come on. I mean, part of being brave is being courageous in the face of fear.
I
Like,
literally-
of knowing that you don't want to do something and
I
then
have in
doing
my
it
notes.
anyway.
I have in my notes. Conor will probably start yelling at me here for being mean.
I'm not gonna yell, but you said, "Honey,
Okay.
calm down," and I'm like, "That's my opening."
No, I
I'm
caught
gonna tell you to calm down,
myself.
too.
I caught myself. I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, is he really brave? All right, let's have you face off with the giant
True.
next time. Jesus.
Okay.
All right.
Fuck.
So now let's move over to the Brave Little Squire. Let's talk story and characters there.
Okay. All right, so let's start with Mortimer. I think he's a pretty perfect slapstick villain because rather than being scary or really causing true harm or destruction, he's just an absolute coward and a blowhard. And this feels like a nice evolution for a more modern cartoon, rather than having the primary villain just be like my favorite word, menacing. He's not menacing.
Wow. Throwback to episode 1.
Yeah. If you've been here since then, thank you so much. Joanna Lumley as the narrator is gold, and having a narrator role just enriches the fairy tale and medieval inspiration of this short. It gives it nice variety, again, from other episodes in the series, and it's extra fun to see Mickey return to a classic fairy tale setting within a series that, like I said, largely takes place in more modern ones. I also love that the storybook form of storytelling isn't relegated to just the beginning and the end of the cartoon, but is used to summarize Mickey's further trials and disillusionment with Mortimer quickly.
Agreed.
So this also, we get it done quickly. We don't have to belabor the point, but it also shows us that Mickey isn't pissed after like 2 or 3 bad incidents. He puts up with a lot before he reaches his breaking point with Mortimer, which I think is some really nice like character development or character trait for him. He's got more patience than you would think.
But also, like, it plays really well into story structure because I had here, like, the rule of 3 in comedy is, like, sacrosanct. And it was a way of them having us know that Mortimer does this a lot, but still adhere to the rule of we see 3 confrontations.
True. We see 3. I love that. So true. And in this, we really get to see Mickey choose to be brave. When he runs toward the castle to protect Queen Minnie from the dragon as Sir Mortimer runs away, we really see the heart of Mickey.
Yeah.
And he isn't being brave in order to win money or the hand of a princess. And I don't think that's a bad thing in Brave Little Tailor, literally at all. It's like we talked about, it's presented in such a good way. But it's fun that he's motivated by his own personal dream. He wants to be a knight. He wants to protect the kingdom. He wants to be bold and chivalrous. I like that a dream that Mickey holds close to his heart is like the center of this. And we get to watch his willingness to serve and be helpful and try again, even after the first time Mortimer lets him down. And I think that's a really nice thing to see from Mickey too. I enjoyed seeing his indefatigable side, and I feel like it counteracts a little bit of what I might mention in the quote unquote like weakness portion.
Okay. Yeah.
And I feel like just the right amount of fun is being had with this medieval setting with things like, you know, ye old village notice board. Like the jokes don't overpower, but they're consistently there. And I keep
and
referencing.
When Mortimer just chucks that old woman.
He throws the woman.
Going,
He talks about the plague.
That gets me.
Yeah. All of this gives it, I keep referencing this, but like a jokey like Ren Fair vibe that I really enjoy and I find very funny.
Yeah.
Also a small thing, but you know I'm going to call it out. It was really nice to see Minnie elevated from princess to queen and running the kingdom without a king like a boss. It's a nice update. And the way that she says, Mortimer, is so funny to me. I don't know why, but it really like fucking sent me every time she would say, Mortimer. So good.
There are some line deliveries on this show that are just
when he's
iconic.
like, your sword,
like,
my lord. Like, it's just good stuff.
But even outside of this short, like in that cable car chaos
oh
one,
my
which is
God.
episode 2 of the first season.
We love that
of
episode.
These ones where she's like, Mickey, Minnie.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
how in
So good.
It's just hilarious. Mortimer.
Mortimer. I can't. It's so funny to me. I have to control myself. Okay. And just overall, I think, you know, obviously this is inspired by Brave Little Tailor. And I think it feels like a really nice expansion of the themes and the setting established there. And it scratches some of the like more situational and character itches that I wanted scratched.
Yeah.
So it was great. It was very satisfying in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I liked like the little references that we get of like how Mickey defeats the first monster with his tail being very reminiscent of the thread that's used in Brave Little Tailor, his costume, things like that. I also think that a really big asset to the story here is the pacing. It's very fast. It's very exaggerated, clearly influenced by modern comedy that likes to reverse things from one extreme to another for the laugh. And that's where I think the vector animation really plays in well with going from huge extremes, because vector animation is just like, it's not as natural looking. And the way that they're approaching telling this story is not natural either. Like when I think of the comedy of Mortimer just throwing that old woman at the notice board, I think that's so funny because it happens and he just keeps on going.
Yes.
And it's a very modern approach to comedy of you just tell the joke and keep on going. And if you miss it, you miss it. If it got you, it got you. And we don't care because by the time you're processing it, we're already on to the next joke.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's working really, really well in these shorts. Like it's kind of cool to see Mickey and these characters still being able to function as themselves in a completely like new style of storytelling.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, these characters have become such tropes that you can kind of put them on you can
They're
put them through the
flexible,
ringer on
yeah.
anything and they'll be able to work it.
That's true.
And like, I think that kind of leads into this one, which is this last thing that I have, which is about Mickey. And it kind of borders both the strength and the weakness side. So like fangirl Mickey that we see at the beginning.
Yes, yes.
On one hand, it helps to create like a very 360-degree view of the character of Mickey. And the way that I'm saying that is we get a very, very specific point of view for Mickey in this short. So we can relate to him through specifics as opposed to being a sounding board for us like we have in Brave Little Tailor, where it's like he's so general that we can be anything. This version of Mickey is so super duper specific that we're like, oh my God, that's so specific. I get that. Like we'll find one minute thing and be like, oh my God, they included that. I understand that. And so I think it's helpful in characterizing Mickey, the icon overall, as opposed to just Mickey in this short.
Yeah.
Because now we have such a specific view of Mickey where it's like Mickey now is fangirl. Like that exists in Mickey because we've seen it now.
Yeah.
So when I say the Mickey before, like the general Mickey, the sounding board Mickey that we have in Brave Little Tailor, I'm not trying to say that that's bad compared to this version of Mickey. But I think that they are approaching this version of Mickey in a smart way because if you have a character like Mickey being general for so long, the character then starts to become stoic.
Yes.
And so what they're doing is they're allowing Mickey to be messy again. And the way that they're doing it is by putting these shorts put him in extremely specific situations with extremely specific points of view to show us that Mickey can be anything by being one very particular thing in one short to the next.
Well said.
It is literally the polar opposite approach to Mickey from Brave Little Tailor. And as I was watching it, I'm actually really glad that we compared these two because it couldn't be more different in these approaches to Mickey, but both are completely valid and both are Mickey. So whether or not you like fangirl Mickey, that's neither here nor there. But in terms of functioning, what the job is to do of like saying that Mickey can be this as well, they do it. Like they do it absolutely right. So now if we're like, do you think Mickey would be like, is there a version of Mickey where he's like a fan? Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen him when he's like fawning over Mortimer. And so now we can transition into weaknesses because I'm sure you're going to talk about this version of fangirl Mickey.
Yeah. And that was well said. And that's a great transition because it's under weaknesses for me, but I completely agree with everything you're saying. Like, I feel like seeing these aspects of Mickey is like so important to the like not even evolution, but to the continuation of the character, continuing to keep him alive. So yeah, this episode specifically highlighted some of the aspects of this quote unquote new Mickey that some people find very off-putting. Like people jokingly online will call him like evil Mickey or something. I definitely do not agree with that. He can be a little bit, maybe at times, whiny or yelly, like in this episode saying things like, "What the heck?" And I've seen a lot of episodes of The Wonderful World of Mickey and Mickey Mouse. And while this Mickey has a bit of a quote unquote edge, watching this like alongside Brave Little Tailor and knowing the older Mickey cartoons, it reminded me, again, like you've talked about, much less so in Brave Little Tailor, but Mickey always has had a bit of sass to him. He wasn't originally the soft, smiley theme park Mickey. That Mickey that we see in the parks isn't really pulled from anywhere. He is his own version. He is theme park Mickey there. He is not based on the original cartoon at all.
Yeah.
It's taste, like we've mentioned earlier. If you don't really like your Mickey that way, that's fine. But if you want to talk about like, why did they make him like this? He is based on the original cartoon Mickey. Why do I have this in my weaknesses? Because suddenly I'm finding myself defending him. Here's what I'll say. What I will say is Mickey feels a lot more likable, for lack of a better word, or a little bit more maybe mature and a little bit less abrasive in other episodes of this series and its predecessor series. For example, in the Mickey Mouse series, the episode The Adorable Couple, Mickey can't bring himself to get into a fight with Minnie. Or in Couple Sweaters, he can't bring himself to tell her that the sweater that she gave him is too itchy because he just loves her and just like wants her to be happy. And in those episodes, we still have more of this edgier modern humor. So even though we do get to see Mickey in this episode really want to do good, just like in Brave Little Tailor, there's a little tiny bit of softness to him that's missing here that shows up as desperation, that fanboy, fangirl Mickey vibe. That could be a little bit off-putting. And yeah, now I know we're only really comparing this to Brave Little Tailor, but I can't help but compare it to the rest of the Mickey Mouse and Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse series. And yeah, just compared to some of those other episodes, this one doesn't have quite as many laugh out loud moments for me. Like some episodes of this show have me dying.
Yeah.
Interestingly, like you were talking about earlier, this is so much more of a slapstick romp than Brave Little Tailor. But in comparison to other episodes of this series, this is more of a good short story rather than a slapstick romp, which I find very interesting. And I don't mind that personally at all. We gotta have variety within the series. But there were only a couple of moments in this one that really got me. There were so many funny things, but like the dragon saying, "Oh no," after Mickey extinguishes its fire was very funny to me. Mortimer seeing Mickey as a sucker lollipop, very fucking funny.
The Donald Duck roasted duck
Donald.
in the wheelchair.
Yes. But yeah, like the episode we referenced earlier, like Cable Car for me really stands out as one of the most laugh out loud funny episodes ever. So just in comparison, there just aren't quite as many of those really, really laugh out loud moments in this one. But I don't know. I feel like overall those are slightly minor weaknesses because you have to put them in context a bit. So yeah, that's why earlier in my weakness, I was defending Mickey because I completely agree with everything you said and like that this is a good fit for Mickey. This is the right direction for Mickey. I agree.
Yeah. In some of these shorts, I think Mickey's personality can be a bit jarring.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not quite what you would expect. And I think this is definitely one of those shorts.
Yes.
Where if this is your first introduction to this type of Mickey Mouse, you could be very, very put off by all of this in general. I can understand if people would be like, yeah, I don't like this Mickey. Like, it's a weak point. But also, fortunately, with the way that this series and its predecessor series are constructed, because they're showing all these so specific versions of Mickey, if this isn't your vibe, you can just switch to the next one.
Yeah, true.
And if you're watching another short and you're like, feels so specific and this doesn't really feel like Mickey, switch to the next one because you're going to get a completely different version of Mickey.
Yes, watch The Adorable
you'll find
Couple.
One that you vibe with.
If you're looking for softer Mickey, start with The Adorable Couple because he and Minnie are so classic and Daisy and Donald are very classic them in that episode too.
Because also Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, the Perfect Picnic cartoon, that feels very, very true to an older version of Mickey that people are more familiar with.
Yes.
And so like that feels very right. And also like talk about another short that I find like super hilarious, that Perfect Picnic.
Yes.
Just like when Minnie just like chucks the picnic basket like fully up in the air and then it just like lands on Pluto and then she just slams the trunk shut.
Yeah.
I just think that's so funny.
I agree. It's
because of how fast things happen. It's not realistic and it can only be achieved in this type of animation.
Yes, so true.
All right, so I think that's all of our strengths and weaknesses for all of this. Let's sort of come to a decision here on putting these two next to each other, which, I mean, number one, we're always going to have this experience of like, how do you compare these
I know.
two? Well, that's what we do. That's what we have to do.
I know.
What are some of your final thoughts that you've got?
I'm trying not to be swayed because this new Mickey, quote unquote, these two series have grown so much on me over time.
Yeah.
I think I just categorize as like, yeah, there's new Mickey and it's like, you know, the humor is a little bit more edgy. I don't really like that. No, I really enjoy these. These are very enjoyable to me.
I never expected them to grow on me the way that they did. And I was like, it got me. It really, really got me. I gave it a chance and it got me.
Yeah. And it's tricky for me because some of the things that detract a little bit from Brave Little Tailor, I think are largely due to just like the fact that this is from the 30s. And so when you think about
Yeah.
it that way, it stands up so well. The 30s? That's
Yeah.
pretty fantastic. Like it's still enjoyable. Yeah, some things like the cigar take you out of it, but it's very like the pace is still great. It's still like good. It's humor we can still find funny. It's impressive. And it feels even more difficult to choose a winner now after the discussion we've had about the really, really great point that you've made about a more like a Mickey where we can project ourselves onto him versus like a very specific Mickey that maybe we can identify with. They're doing such different things. So how do you compare them?
Yeah. I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to look at, as much as it may pain us, we have to look at, for the Brave Little Squire, the specific Mickey that is represented in that short. And I think we do have to divorce some of the other Mickeys that might resonate with us a little bit more in the Mickey Mouse shorts and the wonderful world of Mickey Mouse shorts.
Yeah.
And in a similar way, we can't let Steamboat Willie or Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey or any of those types of
Right.
Mickey influence Brave Little Tailor.
Right. It's so difficult. Uh, I'm torn on the Mickey part, like which characterization of Mickey wins for me. I'm still working that out in my head. The music and design for me is difficult because it's, again, feels a little bit time period specific. But for me, in some ways, obviously story is part of this too, but the music and the design for me add up to kind of equal the like delight factor a little bit.
Yeah.
And the delight factor is higher for me in the Brave Little Squire, but I'm like, how much of that is just my modern sensibilities? What are your thoughts?
I'm having the same thing where I'm like, my modern sensibilities are coming into play. I think that the things that they're doing with animation in the new Mickey Mouse shorts are so freaking cool. And I'm also trying really, really hard to divorce myself of the experience of riding Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, where
Mhm.
I have never felt like I have been inside a cartoon more. Like,
Yeah.
it's an unreal experience. But then I'm also just like, the Brave Little Tailor animation style, am I not responding to that as much because that's an animation style that I'm so used to seeing? You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right. Yeah, I do.
Like, am I responding? Is the newness factor,
Yeah, absolutely.
like recency bias, playing a part here? Which I think it might, because I mean, when I think about Brave Little Tailor, like some of the design, like the costuming, and
I know.
it's just it's so rich, and it doesn't have to be. And this characterization of Mickey in Brave Little Tailor, I really, really like him. That feels
I like
very
him too.
reminiscent of like a Mickey that I like. Him opening that window and being like, 7 in 1 blow. I'm like, he's literally
talking about
opening
flies.
this window.
Like, why are you making
He's
such a
talking
big
about-
deal
he was
out of this? Like,
But you know what? Like, I was thinking about myself, and I'm like, you know what? If I killed 7 flies in one blow,
You
I'd probably like,
you totally would.
I'd be like, you would never believe what I
you
I mean,
would.
hell, right before we started recording, we had a fly in here, and I was like hunting this thing down. So, like, how fitting. But I don't know. There was something very, very charming and relatable about that. And I really, really liked that version of Mickey compared to
Yeah.
Fangirl Mickey.
Yes, me
and,
too.
Uh,
Yes.
so I think in comparing these two specific characterizations of Mickey, not more broadly what they're doing, but these two specific ones, the characterization of Mickey is going to Brave Little Tailor Mickey for me.
Yes. Me too. But then I think the story of the Brave Little Squire is the one that I like better.
Yes, the story execution.
Yeah.
It's just like it's sharper. It's
Yes.
a little bit sharper.
And it's more of an believe it or not, is more of an emotional journey like for Mickey. Even though I don't like the characterization as much,
agree.
it's like him really being like, I want to be this good person. I want to make my dream come true. You know, clean storytelling as far as that.
I would agree. So it feels like that category is a little bit split. And then design
Yeah.
and music, I do think that I would give design and music to Brave Little Tailor, because I do think my recency bias is playing a little bit too much of a role in my appreciation for what's going on in the Brave Little Squire, because also I look at some of my notes and I'm just like, these watercolor backgrounds. I'm like thinking about him on the drawbridge outside of that castle and
Yeah.
just how detailed that was.
It's so funny that you say that because one of my favorite moments from the Brave Little Squire is the drawbridge, because it's one of those like 2.5D moments when the drawbridge comes, he like calls for the drawbridge.
Yeah.
So it's so funny that both of those moments in each of these are really design wise so good for me.
And like another little moment that I love is like when he, in Brave Little Tailor, when he gets the giant down and he sort of like rocks the land around him. A
Yes,
little
it all rises
hillside
up.
grows
Yeah,
up, and
yeah.
the windmill plops down right
Yeah.
on it. I'm like, that's just like such an interesting, kind of difficult effect to make
Yeah.
happen. And they were like, they did it. I really feel like they went all out in Brave Little Tailor in a way that the Brave Little Squire feels intentionally artistic, but they weren't pulling out all the stops on it.
I hear you.
So I think I'm like 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
I'm like 3 out of 4 on Brave Little Tailor and 1 out of 4 on the Brave Little Squire.
My problem is I'm 2 and 2 because for me, I am in love with the score of the Brave Little Squire. I love it so much. So I'm really 2 and 2, but I guess by that math, if I'm tied and you're leaning more towards Brave Little Tailor, then I guess it's that.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me. Like, I really am. I always do this. I know. But really, for real people, you heard me. I gave them number values this time. Like, I'm not being soft. Like, I gave 2 and 2. Like, come on.
Yeah, you're 2 and 2. That's okay. I think I'm 3 and 1.
All right.
Which
it hurts me a little, but all right.
I know. Well, it ends up putting it 5-3 in the end, which is not bad.
But that's even more of a difference than I feel in my heart. But
oh my God,
that's how these things go. That's how these things go.
Why do we even have this as a freaking thing in the rotation then? But no, I think we can say in this showdown it will go to Brave Little Tailor, and we say this with the utmost respect for the Brave Little Squire, the Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse shorts, and the Mickey Mouse shorts.
Okay, that helps.
If you have not given these a fair shake, if you've judged them or you've seen one and like didn't really like it, I beg you, please keep clicking around through them or give them a shot, because they're so good. And I think that they're really, really important because they came at a time. It was the sort of like try everything time when they were really trying to foster creativity in Walt Disney Animation Studios, and Bob Iger sort of like went in and was like, I want everybody to just like go do something and like have fun with Mickey Mouse and everything like that. And this is one of the things that came out of that conversation because it was just pure, unmitigated like creativity from the animators. This is what they wanted to do. And I think that's really important. And I think it's really important that we knocked Mickey off of this weird pedestal that we were putting him on right before his like 100th birthday.
Yes. This is a good time.
So that we could remind ourselves like where he came from and that Mickey can be anything. If there's anything that we take away from this episode, it is truly that Mickey can be anything, and the way that he can be anything is always.
And in all different ways as well.
All different ways.
Yeah. Right before Mickey turns 100, let's kind of take a new look at him. And he's not just the one that you're taking a photo with in the parks. He's so much more than that.
And that he doesn't belong to any one person. He doesn't belong to any one idea. I think it's a really good thing. So
yeah. This was good. We needed to have a little bit of a discussion about Mickey. I'm so glad we did this.
We really did. I think it was time.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Brave Little Tailor. And please make sure that you check out the Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse and the Mickey Mouse shorts. You won't regret it. If you are heading toward a Disney park, go onto that Resort TV and click on some of these shorts, and I guarantee you it's going to be a great time.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for us for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please also remember to hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast so all of our episodes download to your device and you don't miss out on anything. And then this is that moment where we're all going to hit 5 stars. We're going to leave a written review, and then we're going to tap that share button and send it to a friend because what? Sharing is caring.
Please also follow us on social media. We are at Poor Unfortunate Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and TikTok. Social media is so important in helping us find new listeners.
So
we had
important.
so grateful. We had one reel really blow up on Instagram recently, and we saw people following and listening because of it. So truly, sharing is caring on social media as well. If you see a little reel or a little post that we've made and you relate to it, or you think your friend would relate to it, just send it to them. It takes 2 seconds. And it just truly makes a world of difference to us. And if you want even more Poor Unfortunate podcast in your life, please join our private Facebook group, the Poor Unfortunate Fam. We have over 100 members in there. We talk about the episodes. We talk about Disney news. We talk about everyone's Disney trips. And it's just such a warm and wonderful group of people and a fantastic way for Conor and I to hear more about what you all are interested in so we can cover more of it on the podcast. You do not have to be a big Facebook person. The only thing I do on Facebook anymore is look at the fam. So you can do the same thing, and we are going to be so excited to meet you when you do that.
And if you're looking for merch, the Poor Unfortunate shop is open. That's poorunfortunatepodcast.com/shop. T-shirts, hats, water bottles, the whole shebang. It's all in there. And then, as I always say, it does take us a little bit of money to keep the podcast up and running and coming to you. We do have a PayPal account. It is linked in our episode description and in the website links in our social media accounts. Truly, anything they have to spare goes a long way for us. It could be $1, $5, $10. It could be more than that. It could be a one-time donation, and it could be a monthly donation. It all just goes right back into the podcast, helping us keep it free and ad-free for the most part. And to all of our monthly donors, thank you so much. This wouldn't happen without you. All right, we will see you next week with a new Caroline What's New, followed by a Tips and Tricks episode. So until then,
Beluga Savruga.